Can you hear me now? Okay. First of all, welcome everybody. Please silence your cell phones, which I need to do in a minute. And would you please do the first time attendees?
Who's here for the first time? Tell us your name, how long you've been here, and which building.
I'm a street walker.
Street people.
Oh, I know. I haven't been here that long. I'm on Craigmont, and my name is Bob Skack, and I've been here a little over a year and a half.
Right. Good to have you.
Yeah.
Streetwalkers. All right. He's Craig Rocker. He's on Craigmont.
My name's Tanya Handley. I live at Villager North. I've been here 11 months.
Great. Welcome. Who else? I saw more hands than that. Now you're all hiding.
Come on, new people, new people.
Dale and Pat Maxwell, and we've been here since October.
And where are you?
Oh, on Willow Place.
On Willow Place, the Maxwells. Anyone else? This is your first meeting? You don't have to be a new resident. First meeting.
There's one. Right up there. Point.
Hi, we're the Eberts from E-Building.
The Eberts from E-Building. Who else? Welcome all. Bring somebody else. There might be a prize next time. There won't.
Okay. All right. Next, Anthony, please.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I know we've got a busy agenda, so I was only going to take 2 minutes. I mentioned this to the Resident Council Executive Committee on Friday, but I'm going to continue to express gratitude to you all. We made some pretty big announcements here a few weeks ago, and just the entire staff have been very appreciative of the response that you all have had. The questions that you all have asked have been very pragmatic and things about, like restaurant hours and transportation and things like that. So we've been very appreciative of the response. It's exciting news. There's a lot of work that we have left to do. The other expression of gratitude I was going to have, I talk a lot about the importance of us living in a community like Lee Summit and that it is growing. I had a resident in a meeting last week talk about the downsides of the growth of Lee Summit, that it may not feel as much like a small town, community anymore. And I just want to let you know, I just left a meeting where a couple groups that work for the nonprofits in Lee Summit, so Coldwater, Lee Summit Social Services, were talking about back in November when SNAP benefits were cut while the government was shut down. And they said that they have never received more donations from their community than in that 2-month period. And they spoke to, they'd have a lot of peers that work for nonprofits across town. There is no community like Lee Summit that responds, that helps our neighbors out. And so, that I was encouraged just as we grow, and now we're above 105,000 people that live here, it still does have that small, warm, welcome feeling. And we've got some great not-for-profits in our community that are really helping a significant need. But, I was just encouraged because when there is a need, we show up for one another. So that's my good news for the day.
I'm going to steal some of Anthony's time. I was digging through my calendar looking for the date that I stood in front of this illustrious group and announced that we were tearing down Sun Valley Clubhouse. I couldn't find that, but I wanted to revisit when that was. I know at that time I got responses on both extremes, right? People who were so excited, recognizing that that building was old and that space could perhaps be put to other use. And then I had people who, quite frankly, were angry about those changes. So Friday, I ran up to the new rec center and I was greeted by Janet Kroll, who did one of these. It's beautiful, which made me feel really good. But we do have some tweaks yet to do, and both operationally and from a construction standpoint. Hope everybody can hang in there with us. as the building is used for various purposes, if we need to, adjust things, we're more than happy to do that. We welcome your continued feedback as we kind of start living our lives in that building. So, pretty exciting milestone for us. I also wanted to report that next month I'll be the featured speaker about the resident survey results. So we didn't have a meeting in January, and February is always about the budget. So that's why Steve is here. So I got bumped to March, but we actually will have an article in the March Voice that comes out on Friday, February 27th. And that will have some charts with the survey results and some narrative around those. I hope that doesn't deter you from coming next month so that we can kind of talk through those results together and I can add a little bit more than I can in the written word. And then the third thing I wanted to talk about is we were on a conference call with our architectural firm this morning there in Charlotte. They got a foot of snow. It was the fourth largest snow they've ever had. They are stymied because they have no equipment to move the snow. And so that made me feel grateful once again for the storm we had. When was that? 10 days ago, that we didn't have ice, because yay, and that we were able to make it through. So just a couple comments about that. The VCC had 13 associates spend the night that Friday night, that very cold night before it started snowing, and 7 spent the night on Saturday night. Many of those were the same associates. Assisted living had 9 associates who stayed on campus Friday through Sunday to ensure that the residents' needs were met. One associate who wasn't staying made up cots and beds complete with a chocolate on the pillow for her co-workers who are going to be spending the time. There was also a report of another associate who didn't put her dibs in for one of those beds far enough in advance. She ended up just putting 2 chairs together and kind of plopping in the middle of those chairs. That shows the level of commitment. Dining, we had folks in dietary at the care center and also at places spend the night. And then those plow drivers came in at 3:30 a.m. And so I don't know if any of you heard them, but I hope, okay, I would have slept right through that. But thank goodness for them, right? Because I don't know about you, but I don't want to get up at 3 o'clock and come in and do that. We used 30 tons of salt on the roads and parking lots and 4 pallets of ice melt for the sidewalks and driveways. And part of the reason we used so much is because there was a lot of cycles of freezing and thawing and reapplication. But that stuff just doesn't work as well when it's as cold as it was. On the bright side, Dave reports that all that moisture is good for the 17,400 sleeping tulips we have, which will be here before we know it. So that's my report. Where's Ron? Oh, do you want this, Ron? Ron, I'll get this to you afterwards.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll have Gail Benet from the foundation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Feels like I haven't seen you all for a long time. I just have a couple of things I want to announce. First of all, Anthony mentioned about our Great Lee's Summit community. We will be receiving a grant this afternoon from the Greater Lee's Summit Healthcare Foundation. We applied for funding for a piece of equipment. It's a virtual reality piece of equipment, and it's got like headphones and goggles and everything, and it transports you to wherever you want to go. It can be the street you grew up on. It can be the Eiffel Tower. It can be anywhere on this earth. So they were very, very impressed by John Knox Village's emphasis on technology. And they did fully fund that. It will be used both in independent living and also in assisted living and memory care. So very excited to be able to order that and see people enjoy it. I want to try it. I kind of want to see where I grew up because I kind of don't remember. So anyway, we'll see how that goes. Second thing I want to tell you is we will be having a gala this year. It will be on September 19th. We are still discussing possible beneficiaries for the event. We will meet with the ambassadors about that on Friday and with the trustees in a few weeks. So we should have an answer for you or more information for you by the this is February, by the March resident council meeting. So September 19th, if you want to put that on your calendar, we hope that you will all be there. So, and then lastly, to follow up again on what Anthony said, I want to again express my sincere gratitude to you for all of your support through the EMS campaign last year. I think you all know we were successful. We exceeded our goal. We did that because of you, and I will never be able to thank you enough for the hard work that you put in, the gifts that you gave, the prayers that you said. It all worked. So, the board of directors of John Knox Village will meet next week to approve the interim funding so that we can get started while pledges are coming into the foundation over the next several years. And then it is my understanding that we plan to start work sometime in March. So we are on schedule. We'll keep you updated. You don't want to go in there because we have not evicted the raccoons yet, but that we have given them notice. So anyway, thank you again so much for your support and your gifts, and couldn't have done it without you. Thank you.
Okay, now we'll work through our committees, starting with finance.
Hi, I'm Jay Goodman with the Finance Committee. We met just last week, and Steve Segerman, our Chief Financial Officer, reviewed the financials for the month of December with us, and also reviewed the budget for the upcoming fiscal year and gave us an opportunity to ask questions and discuss that budget. The month of December was a solid month for John Knox. Operating revenue was above budget. Operating expenses were slightly below budget. And the operating margin was 12.5%, which again is above budget and above last year at this time. The month of December was the ninth month of the fiscal year. And if you look at those 9 months cumulatively, the year-to-date operating revenue was 2.8% above budget. The year-to-date operating expenses were 2.5% below budget. And the year-to-date operating margin was 13.3%, which is above both budget and above where we were this time last year. So it's been continuing to be a solid year. Now, operating margin is a very important financial measure, and we review that every month in the Finance Committee. And operating margin means it's always phrased as a percentage, and what it represents is the percentage of operating revenue that remains after operating expenses are paid. So John Knox right now with a 13.3% operating margin means that John Knox is generating the operating revenue needed to pay its expenses, operating expenses, and has 13.3% of that revenue remaining for other uses. And that remaining revenue gets put to work immediately. It's used to help pay for the principal and interest on John Knox's long-term bonds. And you can think of those bonds sort of like a mortgage payment. And those are the bonds that were used to build the Meadows, the Courtyard E building. And that's significant. That I call it a mortgage, but it's about $10 million a year. So it's a significant mortgage. And that's part of what that additional revenues goes for. That revenue is also used to help replace aging equipment. And it's also used to help pay for the renovation of independent living units as they become available. There are 5 business units in John Knox. I think you all know them. It's independent living, assisted living, the care center, emergency medical services, and the home and community services, which comprises 3 departments. That's home health, hospice, and outpatient therapy. All 5 of those business units, and this is always a pleasure to be able to announce, but all 5 of those business units are running a positive operating margin. That means all 5 of them are generating more revenue than they are expense. And within home and community services, hospice program continues to run very solidly, very strong. Outpatient therapy has a positive operating margin. In home health, is at break even, almost at break even point. And I think if you've been around here for a while, you know that's a very significant turnaround from some time in the past. As I indicated, Steve reviewed the budget with us for fiscal year. I won't talk about that because Steve's here and he's going to be reviewing it with you in just a little later in this program. And then finally, our meeting, we always meet the last Wednesday of every month. Our meeting next month, I think, is going to be really interesting. It's Wednesday, February 25th. And I think we're all excited about this, the new building program, the campus reimagining. What we're going to be talking about in that meeting is how do you pay for it? What's the financing? And so we're looking forward to that meeting. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Frank Colburn, Chair of the Health Services Committee. We met on the 14th in the boardroom, and this program was a continuation of what we've been doing for the last few months, a day in the life of narratives from staff and the various health entities that we oversee. That program focused on outpatient therapy, and our guests were Michael Stoker, Administration of Home Health, Hospice, and Victoria Chateau, the manager of outpatient therapy. Victoria was the presenter. A physician's referral is necessary to start therapy, and in the first session, a licensed therapist does an initial evaluation, taking a thorough history, and the patient is always asked, "What are your goals?" And he or she wants to attain. They jointly set the goals, which are usually strength, range of motion, and balance, those sorts of things. After that session, patients are given homework to do between the sessions. Usually, the sessions are typically 2 or 3 times weekly, usually with a physical therapy assistant. Each session starts with, how was your last session, and how did the homework go? Outpatients are usually seen for about 2 months. Often they are then referred to the fitness center to continue their work. Inpatient rehab therapy following hospitalization also requires a referral, and the skilled care needed requires a minimum 3-day stay in the hospital to qualify for Medicare. This is limited to 20 days. Therapists there work cooperative with the outpatient therapy so they can jointly provide 7 days service to cover patients that need this inpatient. Our next, Victoria's presentation was followed by a presentation by Anthony. We got advance notice of the big expansion, and we were happy to get the first notice of that. Our next meeting will be February 11th in the boardroom, and that will feature rehabilitation and home health.
I'm Fran Baker, Chair of the Resident Services Committee, and our last meeting was January 12th. Maria Timberlake, Vice President of Senior Living, shared some key changes in the 2026 JKV Handbook. Some items were moved to another area in the book. There were more cross-references, which should make it easier to find information. There are some new sections. Some of those include composting, Curana, gift cards, grills, ID badges, meal delivery, notice of non-discrimination practices, and pride. The names of home care services were changed to reflect the new branding. For example, in the past it was Village Hospice, and the change is now Hospice by John Knox Village. So those changes were also made. Be sure to look at your handbook. It has wonderful information. Committee members also had the opportunity to ask questions and share concerns related to the All Village Town Hall meeting. Residents may request more information individually or for a group meeting. The administration and the area managers are willing to visit with you. Last fall, as Maria just mentioned, the Halloran survey was completed and the results are tabulated. Maria will be presenting in March. Our committee in the next few months will hear from a different department head each month regarding the survey results and their plans to work with those. And our next meeting is February 9th.
I'm Sue Rusco, Chairman of Nominating Committee. The Nominating Committee met January 20th. All 7 members were present. The minutes of the November 18th meeting were approved. The Resident Council guidelines for selection of a resident JKV board member, page 3 and Appendix B, page 12, were reviewed. It was announced that there was 1 resume submitted. The committee reviewed the resume and unanimously approved sending it to the board of directors in a sealed envelope in February. It will be delivered today. Please ignore the 2 dates nominating committee is mentioned in the February double-page calendar in the Village Voice. We don't meet in February. The committee meets regularly in odd months. The next meeting of the nominating committee will be at 9:30, March 17th in the Westminster Room. Thanks.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. I'm just going to say this is going to be an exciting time at JKV. And right now I want to, because you did not hear our November sales, I want to take you back in time for just a few minutes. When I was growing up, I sat and listened to my grandpa and my grandma tell stories about when they were a kid, from holding the cellar door down while the tornado passed over to hauling coal in Pittsburgh, Kansas for the railroad. I hope you all have good memories of that. Our sales department has a person who loves to tell stories, Joel Palmer. He has interviewed some of the residents around here about their history in their lifetime. And I think it would be awesome if maybe in a town hall or maybe in one of these, we get to hear some of those stories, because we have some mighty awesome people at JKV, and we do not know them all. And we ought to get to know them. And that just makes us better all the way around. Now, for the boring part. We did meet January 15th, and we got to hear about how marketing is going to market Meadows North, and I call them the hybrids. They call them Country Club Estates. We've got marketing material is out there. They had a meeting January 27th to bring people in, to give them the opportunity to hear about it. Five floor plans, collars, cabinets, all kinds of stuff. Put your name in. They've put down a deposit of $1,000, $5,000. They're all given a number. We had one actually sign a check. The first 10 to 15 people with those numbers and say yes, they get their choice of what they want. So that's exciting. They give you about 3 days to decide, and they just have a bank of like 84 people, and they just keep calling. until they get all the units sold. So they've got their work cut out for them. The other side of that is being on the sales committee, we also get to see some of their material that they mail out, and it's pretty exciting. And they do an excellent job. They at one time was trying to decide how they wanted to advertise JKV Reimagined, like in the KC Journal. The TV, we are on Channel 5 all the time with various things. Mail, internet. Internet is the going thing now, so that will be interesting. Hopefully construction starts in June on the Meadows North, so we will see how that goes. And I'll just put a plug in. One of the advantages to being on the sales committee is that you actually get the 417 of what's going on. You don't get all the rumors like E-Building was going to have a glass elevator. You get from Mary Beth and Karen exactly what they're doing. Even Eric Scott will come and show pictures of the construction. So we meet on the third Thursday of every month at 9:30 in the Manhattan Room. Come have breakfast at places and come be on the committee. We do have some members coming off, and we welcome anybody who is interested. And this way you hear it from the horse's mouth. And when somebody says, oh, we're going to do this, you can go, no, I don't think so. I'm sorry. But anyway, that's just my pitch. December leads. Advertising, the goal was 100. The actual was 101. Referrals, the goal was 25. The actual was 9. Entry fee deposits, goal was 3. Actual was 6. Lease deposits, goal was 6. Actual was 6. Move-ins, entry fees, goal was 2. Actual was 3. Lease, the goal was 4. The actual is 5. Our occupancy now is 875. Villa Phase 11, 12, and 13, they're all sold. Some are moving in, already moved in, some moving in February, some moving in September. And it's my understanding that we are going to do Phase 14 and Phase 15 in the future, and they will be 7 units too. Our next meeting is February 19th. Anybody is welcome. And besides, I like being in sales because it really tells me that John Knox is moving ahead. We're not sitting on our thumbs. We are building to stay active in the Lee Summit Committee. And I can't wait to see those high rises way over off of Pryor. Thank you.
Thank you, Lita. And I would like to just add that as you heard all of these reports from our committees, spring, if you're considering joining a committee, spring is a good time. The way the guidelines are written, a member of a committee can serve two-year terms, and we have a lot of people rotating off. So if you're interested, there'll be some more information coming soon. And now we go to what everybody's waiting for, Steve Sugarman, Vice President of Finance, on the budget.
All right, good afternoon.
Better? Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Maria. All right, good afternoon. Hopefully everyone can see this. It's a 30-slide presentation. The good news, I'm not going to go over all 30 slides. But if you want a copy of this presentation, just see me after the meeting. I'll write down your email and I'll send it to you in a PDF. And so you can take a look at all those 30 slides. But I'm going to highlight about 10 slides today. Please feel free to stop me along the way if you have any questions. I thought before I jump into the actual numbers, it'd be good to go over kind of the process. We started the budgeting kickoff on August 21st. 35 members of the leadership team at John Knox Village met to discuss the process and the budgeting. We then conducted 40 plus meetings from August through December, going through the budget, designing it, reviewing it, tweaking it, adjusting it. There's a lot of time and effort that goes into this budget process. John Knox Village has 3,200 general ledger accounts. That's a lot of accounts. It's a big, complicated process. The village is large and complex. We have over 80 departments at John Knox Village. You wonder, why would you have that many departments? But that is the way we can account and manage for all the activity at John Knox Village. If we just had one department, how would you ever assign responsibility and accountability? So we have those 80 departments so we can assign that accountability and responsibility for hitting the operating results. So this is more about the timeline. Last week, as Jay mentioned, went over with the budget in detail with the Resident Finance Committee. And then last week, we also went over the budget with the Board Finance Committee. Some board members attended that. After this meeting, then February 12th is when the Board of Directors will actually be approving this budget. So I thought I'd just at the top get this out of the way so we know what the increase is, and then I can get into the details of why it's that number. So 3.9% increase for all levels of care, independent living, assisted living, skilled nursing. Some ancillary charges may increase more or less than that 3.9%. We also are increasing the standard monthly dining credit from $220 to $240. So that will start April 1st. There's an eye chart up here, but this shows the increases for senior living going back to 1987. The high was 6.5%. The low is 2.9%. This is 3.9% this year, but the overall average during these 41 years is 4.3%. So over these 41 years, 35 of those 41 years, the increases have been in the range of 2.9% to 4.9%. So that is a lot of stability and predictability for the residents. And that's the goal of the management team, is to provide that stability and predictability. We've had areas of the economy that have hit the village hard. A few years ago, we had a $600,000 gas bill that hit us in February. We don't want to hit the residents with that volatility, the up and down. You wouldn't know what your increase is going to be. And so instead, the village provides that stability by keeping the increases within that range. Over 69% of the next year's budget is for associate wages and benefits. Our FY25 turnover was 59%. We know we have to continue to give increases to remain competitive with the growing and vibrant Lee Summit area. So that's our main source of why we have to have these annual increases, is to keep pace and help us retain and recruit a wonderful workforce for the village. Part of the process for our budget guidelines is we want to have our revenues grow 0.5% faster than our expenses. We call that a budget spread. For the measurement of that, we take what we're forecasting to achieve in the current year. So these numbers here, I know some of you in the back row won't see them, but I'll go over, I'll list them. Line 1 shows the operating revenues. If you exclude Courtyard E, the revenues for FY27 are going to go 4.4% more than what we're predicting this year. Expenses are going to go up 4.4% as well. So for FY27, revenues up 4.4%, expenses up 4.4%. So we do not have a spread. And our historical goal for that spread between revenues and expenses is 0.5%. We spent a lot of time deliberating about, is it appropriate to not have a spread for FY27? We know we want to continue enhancing the village's financial strength, especially during this redevelopment period of our journey. We did some scenarios looking at what would it take to get a 0.5% spread. Well, that would require a 4.6% increase in the resident rates. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to stick to the 3.9%. So we started looking at our performance and saying, well, what have we accomplished so far in FY26? Operating income, as Jay announced, is significantly stronger in FY26 than budget. So we're already showing some strong performance in FY26. We also have Courtyard E. It's coming on. We're going to start tracking that within our existing campus next year. The Courtyard E is already at 50 or 51 occupied units. We're budgeting it to be 100% full next year, and it has strong operating performance. You probably can't read this from back there, but the Courtyard E is 11.9% of senior living's operating income, but it's only 5.6% of the units. So 11.9% of senior living's income, operating income, is being generated by that 52 unit Courtyard E building. Again, it's only 5.6% of the units. That really shows the importance of continuing to redevelop the campus. As we redevelop the campus and have this strong operating performance, that can allow the village to maintain those stable, predictable increases in the rates. A lot of numbers on this chart, but what it's trying to do is how did we manage to do so well in FY26 over budget? Line 4, revenues are 2.5% higher than budget. That mainly occurred because of EMS, assisted living, and hospice. Their revenues have exceeded budget. So that generated additional revenue. Dropping down to the expense side, line 12, you'll see that we're within $11,000 of budget. So we're just right on track with budget. But there's a couple line items in expenses that are varying greatly. Line 5, salaries and wages. It's under budget by over $1 million. We've had and continue to have open positions. So we budgeted to have those positions full. We have some open positions, so we did not spend as much on wages. But you're going to see the next line item there called benefits and taxes. It's $1.1 million higher than budget. As you may know, the John Knox Village is self-insured for its associate health care plan up to $250,000 per claimant. Our health insurance expense for FY26 is $950,000 higher than budget. We've really had a high year, a high claim year. There's been some claimants who've had very high claim cost. The good news is the village is insured after the $250,000 is reached. But you do have years where the health insurance claims will be up, and then the next year they'll be down a little bit. See, that's a little bit up and down. Over time, the village is still saving money by being self-insured with its health plan, but you are going to have years where you're going to have health claim expense is going to come up again. You can't predict when people are going to need to have significant surgeries or have other significant healthcare events. The good news is the village is not being held hostage by an insurance company every fall telling us your increase is going to be 20%, right? So this presents the FY27 budget. Revenues are going up by 7%. You're like, wow, how are they getting to 7%? Well, I want to break that down into a couple components. 3.7% of that 7% is from increases in the rate. 3.9% from the residents, but then Medicare, Medicaid, and these managed care companies, they're not giving us 3.9%. So we end up getting an overall blended average increase in rates of 3.7%. We then have 2.6% is due to including Courtyard E. So of that 7% increase in revenues, 2.6% of it relates to Courtyard E coming online. That means that the remaining 0.7% of that 7% increase in rates is coming from volume. And that is what we're predicting for the health and community services lines of our business. We think they're going to continue their positive trends and grow their revenue. But it's only 0.7. So we're not being aggressive, assuming that, boy, we're going to hit all these new high, great volume, and then we would miss budget. Because that's a recipe for disaster. Anytime you do budgeting and you assume you're going to have all this growth, and then the growth doesn't come, and then you miss your revenue budget. So only 0.7% of that 7% relates to trying to achieve volume growth. And I do think the volume growth we are budgeting is attainable for FY27. You can see down expenses, they're going up 4.9% overall. The biggest piece of that is line 5, salaries and wages. We are budgeting to have a fully staffed workforce. We're not going to budget any vacancy. Now we know that there will be some turnover. We will save some wages when those people do turn, but our budget is to have a fully staffed village. You can see line 5, benefit and taxes. We assumed that we're going to have another high year for benefit and taxes because of the associate health claim expense. Hopefully FY27 is a downturn. It's not quite as high as FY26, but we didn't want to budget assuming that it would go down. So we budgeted elevated levels of associate health claim expense in next year's budget. So overall, you can see down here in line 13, we have a 2.1% spread if you include Courtyard E. 7% increase in revenues. The 4.9% increase in expenses is a 2.1% spread, positive spread of revenues growing faster than expenses. Jay did a nice job of talking about what do you do with the village's operating income. And this slide kind of denotes the numbers behind that. So line 13, that's the operating income. You can see the numbers here. It's $7 million for the budget for 26, $9 million for this year, $11 million for next year. So that's a great growth in our operating income. But then we have a section down here called non-operating income. That represents interest expense, depreciation expense, all the items that Jay was talking about. We use the village's operating income to pay for capital improvements, to do debt service. We also have to make sure we can cover the healthcare cost of the entrance fee contracts. That's part of the non-operating section as well. So we want to continue making sure that we have operating income to cover such items. If you look at the middle column, FY26 forecast, we're budgeting 9.1 operating income, 9.1 million, but all these operating, non-operating costs are 9.1 million, essentially. So in FY26, we're forecasting that we're going to be overall break even, covering all of our capital costs, covering all of our debt service, covering all of our healthcare needs. We want to continue improving that. We don't want that to just be break even. We want it to be where we have a good spread between that as well, so we can be long-term, have that financial strength. A lot of numbers on this. You don't have to look at too many. This is how we develop the assumptions. There's a lot of assumptions that get built into a budget. We don't know the future. We do our best to try to predict the future and be reasonable in our estimates. So line 1 shows you monthly service fee increase, 3.9%. Line 16, the pay increase for our associates, we're assuming a 3% wage pool. You can see line 22, the dining monthly credit is going from $220 to $240. That did push up our dining food cost, of course, but we did budget for that accordingly. So this represents the capital budget. I've presented on the screen the FY26 budget and the FY27 budget, and you can see for routine capital, which is the annual cost of just maintaining the existing campus, it's $4.7 million. The FY26 budget was $4.5 million. I went back a few years. I wanted to see, are we growing this? Because we know our campus is growing. Back in FY23, the budget was $2.6 million. So we've increased our routine capital budget from 2023 to 2027 by $2.1 million, or 81%. So we are investing in the campus and maintaining this campus. We know we have growing needs, and I think we're trying to meet them with this routine capital budget. There's a section down here called villas. We are planning to do 2 phases of the villas next year, but it does depend on how well the first phase goes. So assuming phase 13 goes well, that starts in April, we would probably go and proceed with another phase of the villas in the fall. That results in a total capital budget of $13 million. Because you add in the $4.7 million for routine, the $8.3 million for the villas, that's $13 million that the village is going to be investing in this campus. And we're not talking about the Village Reimagined. That's other. And that's what I'm going to talk about on the next page. A lot of numbers on this page, but what we try to do here is a cash flow analysis. Accountants like to come up with all these things like depreciation and all these things aren't cash related. But at the end of the day, people want to know, is your cash increasing or decreasing? Well, this page does that math. Line 8, after you do all the math, the backing out depreciation and add in all the, non-cash items, the FY26 forecast is to increase cash by $558,000. The FY27 budget is to increase cash by $377,000. So John Knox Village is increasing its cash with this budgeted that I presented here by $377,000. But there is a section down here called development activities. The first one, line 9, is called the EMS headquarters. $1.5 million is shown on that as a use of cash. The foundation, as Gail was mentioning, has done a great job, and all of you, thank you for donating. But a lot of that money is sitting in pledges. That means John Knox Village during FY27 is going to have to upfront $1.5 million of the cost. And then during fiscal year 28 through 31, the village will be repaid as people pay their pledges. But I did need to account for it in this budget because it's going to impact the village's days cash on hand, because we're going to spend that $1.5 million now and get reimbursed all the way through 31. Line 10 is for the Meadows North and the Country Club Estates. We call it pre-finance spending. We're not going to go to the bond market probably till May to get financing for that building to construct it. But you have to incur costs. You got to spend money with the architects. You got to spend money with the design and the planning. You also have to spend money marketing it. We have here in the FY26 forecast to spend, I think that's $3 million. The village will be reimbursed that $3 million when we go to long-term financing. There's also another line here called Country Club Towers. That's line 11. The village is going to spend on that line, it's $4 million all the way through next year, but we'll be reimbursed for those costs when we go to financing. We don't know the exact timing of going to financing for that. Most likely it would be in the late fall of 2027, but a lot depends on the time it takes to design it, and then how long does it take to market that? Because we always want to try to achieve at least 50% pre-sale before we start building something, because then you know that the market is showing that it's viable. These ratios are important to us because we have debt covenants behind them. They're all going up in the right way, except for days cash in hand. Days cash in hand is going down to 225. That's occurring mainly because of those pre-finance spending, but our covenant is only 120. So we're well in advance of our covenant, but our goal is always to maintain at least 200 days of cash in hand, which gives us an 80-day cushion over the covenant. 225 days is still a comfortable level to be at, even with that pre-finance spending. So again, I know there's a lot of data on this. See me after the meeting, and I can email this to you if you're interested in seeing, because there's about 30 more. There's all these slides here that go into a little bit more granular detail about the budget.
I have been doing budgets at the village literally for 3+ decades, and this was the easiest budget season we've ever had. So I want to publicly express my appreciation to Steve and his team for making our lives easier.
I'll open up for questions.
Here, use the mic, please.
Okay. I think I read that the monthly increase in the service fee would be capped at 2% for those who had 10 years residence.
Yeah, the question was about is there a cap on the increase after 10 years? For entrance fee contracts that were entered into after a certain date, I don't know the exact date, but there's after 10 years of living in independent living, thereafter, your increase is capped at 2%, but you need to look at your contract and make sure that you have one of those entrance fee contracts that have that provision in it.
A question here. Real close.
As we visit with people that are interested in joining our community, the two questions I so often get is, how many people actually live here now? And secondly, how many units in total do we have?
So the question is how many people and how many units do we have? And I'm going to give you rounded numbers because sometimes it's a little easier to talk in rounded figures. And we'll include Courtyard E in this. So we have a little over 1,000 units. We probably have 1,200 senior living residents though because of couples. We also have 108, well, let's say rounded 200 assisted living and let's say 100 skilled. So if you want to say how many residents live at the John Knox Village, I would say 1,500. If you want to say how many units we have, then you can just say, well, 1,300. I mean, just very rounded. You'll be close.
I was curious about increases in security, specifically, like as Anthony mentioned, Lee Summit has grown, crime has increased, specifically with security patrols. I know we have a fairly consistent vehicle crime problem. And I'd like to know, and I learned recently that I don't think we have any security patrols at night, which is shocking to me. I was told by security we don't just this week. So I don't know. But anyway, that is my concern. What we can do to try to better prevent vehicle break-ins at night.
Well, the vehicle issues are not a consistent problem. They kind of come in waves where somebody kind of targets the campus. We have a few issues and then nothing for, a year or so. And we do have 2 officers patrolling the campus at all times. So now they could be on a medical call, they could both be on medical calls, but they do patrol 24 hours a day. And we do have 2 officers on staff 24/7.
I live on Craigmont, and in the middle of the night last night, I saw this this big beam going across the back of our yard, and it was security going down the street, shining, checking, making sure everything was secure. So
Well, that's good. Good to
Yeah.
hear.
Yeah.
So their patrolling methodology is not supposed to be predictable. So it's not like you see car 51 go down Craigmont between 2 and 205. And I don't exactly know how they schedule it, but the schedule is 2 officers 24/7. And of course, during the day, we do have more people on campus just naturally around. Does that help?
That they get charged apart at takeoff. Yeah, it'd be a great 2 weeks ago. That'd be a great.
Yes, we did have a catalytic converter stolen. No. Okay, it doesn't cost us $25. There's a whole thing with the charging of the electric cars, but we actually have 3 cars, so there should never be a reason that both cars are being, or that all the cars are being charged at the same time. So I don't know what they said or how that was stated, but I can tell you that our program is 2 officers 24/7. So I will definitely talk to their lead and see what's going on.
Other questions?
My question is, I understand there's a waiting list for assisted living and has been for quite a while. As a contract person, I don't want to, when I'm ready for assisted living, it kind of concerns me that there won't be a place for me.
I could answer, but you'd probably be better.
How did I get to be the speaker? So the numbers guy, the word girl. So so her question is concerned about capacity at assisted living. So a couple of thoughts. We have been more consistently at a higher rate of occupancy the last year than we were there for a while coming out of the pandemic. And so at times, there have been waits to get the ideal unit. So a couple of things. Sometimes we have units open on the 100, 200, or 300 unit, but a resident wants to be on the 400 unit. So in order to be on the 400 unit, they need to wait. Another thing is that sometimes people put their name on the list, their name comes up, they say they're not ready yet, they go to the bottom of the list, and then something happens and they need assisted living and they want it right then, and there isn't a room available right then, so they have to wait a little bit. And the other is sometimes people aren't anticipating their needs, they're not on the list, they have a health crisis and can then need to get in. So it is a good thing to have high occupancy because, as Steve reported, that higher occupancy this year has helped us exceed the budget, which benefits all of you. But it is a balancing act with ensuring that all of our residents can leverage the benefits that they came here for, right? So we are keeping that in the back of our mind, and we can't magically wave, a wand and have more units appear. But we are mindful that we have had some challenges lately. What I would encourage residents to do is if you anticipate your needs changing, be proactive. You came here proactively because you anticipated your needs changing over time as you aged. And so you need to have that same mindset about thinking about whether or not you might need to go to assisted living at some point, or whether you're open to having, home and community-based services come into your home. We can also put together kind of a network between Village Helpers, Home Health, and other services to try to maintain in the independent living setting before going to assisted living. So the concern that you raised is I don't know who raised that because I'm looking out. I thought the voice came from over here, but is a very valid concern and one we are mindful of and trying to manage through. Part of it also depends on residents, again, anticipating their needs. And, if you think you might be needing assisted living and your name comes up and there's a room available, you need to consider whether or not that's the time. And if you pass on it, you may have to wait if your needs change. So, but thank you for raising it. It's a valid concern, especially as we continue to grow that entry fee population in conjunction with our inventory. And one of the slides I'll show you next month is at the back of the survey, we ask a lot of demographic questions, right? We ask your year of birth, your gender, whether you live in an apartment or a non-apartment, entry fee or lease. And you'll see by the pie chart that if I could compare it with 10 years ago, the pie chart on entry fee to lease has changed significantly. So we do want to make sure we have adequate bed capacity. And Steve also did some analysis for me and Anthony on this very topic, that if you took out the community members at assisted living and at the care center, we have more capacity. So we have been turning down community members. And as those people leave those settings, that would make way for more of our current residents are on an entry fee contract to move into those rooms. Does that help? Whoever asked that question? Okay.
Here. What is the percentage of community versus John Knox in the care facilities?
So the question is, what percentage of the residents in like assisted living and skilled nursing are residents of the community and outside? Assisted living, I think it was something like 60% of them are John Knox Village residents. In skilled nursing, I don't remember the exact percentage, but it was less than half. So we do have, like Maria saying, the ability to flex and not accept people from outside John Knox Village if we need those units for a resident of John Knox Village. So there's enough units there. It's just we have to be thoughtful about how many people are we taking from outside the village as we grow our entrance fee population. Then we have to make sure we manage that well and understand the list of people who need that and turn away outside. Now, long term, if it grows, would there be a time we'd want to increase assisted living, the number of units? I don't know. It could be, depending on the market and where people want to get their care. A lot of people say that independent living residents want to stay in their own homes a little bit longer, get private duty. But over time, you can't rule out that we would ever add assisted living. That's to be determined.
But when somebody enters a facility, you truthfully don't know how long they will be there. So if you're accepting like 40% of assisted living
residents are outside the John Knox community, you don't know how long they're going to be there. So what can a John Knox resident be able to have?
Yeah, so the question is well stated that you don't know how long someone's going to live, right? Only God does. And so 40% of those residents in like an assisted living, when are they going to turn? We have AV Powell, our actuary, and over time, the averages do work out with what they've studied, and they've looked at it over time and said, okay, we think the average length of stay will be this long. Now, some people will outlive that, but some people won't live as long as the tables tell us. So I think overall, you're going to hit those averages and we'll be able to predict with some reasonableness how many units will turn in assisted living just by following the actuarial tables. But you're right, we don't know the exact timing, right?
One more burning question.
I don't know that this is burning, but I'm just curious because I've had people ask me, how many memory care units do we have in total and how are they identified? I know the one I go to is past the bird cage, but I have other people who say, no, we go clear over to 2. And I would just like to know how many there are and where they are.
Yeah, the numbers are in the handbook, is what Maria's saying. Rounded, I would say it's 110 assisted living and 70 memory care assisted living, rounded. But I may be off 1 or 2 because you're right. We've kind of taken a one wing and we've went back and forth depending on what is in need. But it's in the handbook, the number. But I would say it's about 110 assisted and 70 memory care. And 180 in total.
One more burning question. Real close.
I'm and my husband are new people, but if you have a full capacity of your assisted living complex and a John Knox person in an emergency or at a point in time needs the assisted living and you're full, where does that John Knox person, where do they go? Do you send them somewhere else? And do you leave them in there where they are and you supply them with care?
Okay, that she is asking if we were at our max capacity and somebody needed care, how would we handle that? So, is your question specifically if we're at max at assisted living? Okay, because there's always then an opportunity to serve that person at the Village Care Center temporarily until a unit comes up. I will tell you, you all, every entry fee resident has a clause in their contract that says if we cannot accommodate you because we are full, that we would assist in getting you to another facility and we would pay the same rate that you would have if you were living here. I cannot remember a time in the last at least decade that we have done that. I just don't recall a time. Things, I hate to sound Pollyanna-ish, but things have a way of working out. You know, we can put together plans to ensure that we can care for residents. But that clause is in there as a protection for you all, not for us. We don't ever want to default to that. We want to care for you here, where your friends can come and visit you, or your spouse, if your spouse lives here, your spouse is nearby, that you have the continuity of the chaplains or that or whoever here from our staff. So there is that clause in there, but I cannot remember the last time that was exercised because it just doesn't, it just never pans out that it needs to be that way. But there is that clause in your contract. Yes.
In our building, we agrees up and he had that they needed assisted living. There were no spaces for John Knox accommodated them in other spaces until their place in assisted living come up. They're all there. John Knox does.
Okay, she had a lengthier comment, but the bottom line is we won't just dump you someplace else. I don't want to make a joke about something so serious. But the thing is, we do have a broad range of healthcare services, and we can knit together, if you will, a support net for a resident based on their individual needs, their financial situation, their family support. I can tell you it can be very different. The resident can have the same situation, have financial resources and not have financial resources, and we have to manage through that differently. You can have family support locally or no family support. Again, how we handle that. We can have family that daughter A and daughter B disagree about what should happen with mom, and we try to work through that. I mean, we have all sorts of different scenarios, and we try to plug in the right resource. Sometimes that's Melanie McGraw having a family meeting and saying, okay, what are we going to do? Or sending in Paul Budd, the chaplain, or whatever we can do. We want to take care of people and fulfill our contractual obligation here on our campus with our resources in a way that meets you where you're coming from. And some people, they have comfort going to the next level. Some people want to stay in their independent living setting and sometimes struggle, but that we're respecting their choice and trying to make the resources available so they can live that time out how they want to. So. Well, we try, and I think we got a lot of really positive feedback in the survey about options. Having options and choices has always been part of the village, a function of the size of the organization, and that can work well from a daily lifestyle standpoint, or it can work well when somebody's needs change and we need to put together a plan that respects their needs and wishes. Joe, can I give this to you now? It is the ski. Oh.
This way.
All right, that was quite an interesting conversation and lots of good information. The next general meeting is going to be our lovely Maria, who just did a whole bunch of this one. And so I'm sure she'll have some other interesting questions along those lines how we've answered the surveys. So that will be good, and we'll see you next month. Please turn your cell phones back on.